So this is our second video on Emerson's essay Compensation, and this one's called The Animal versus the Divine. So let's make that human-divine distinction here. Human animals need external compensation. There's nothing terribly wrong with that. We all need food, clothing, shelter. We all want money. It's helpful to have. We can do a lot of things with it. We want to be thought well of by other people. There's all sorts of external goods that are fine, and to think of that's the animal in us that wants those, and or you could say the lizard brain and the liminal covering of the brain, but the divine you could think of as the frontal cortex, right? It's very free. It's very different. It gets to take the lay of the land on its own and is free of a lot of this genetic survival instinct. And so to think of the divine as having compensation so closely bound to the act that they're really indistinguishable. And so that the good is not separable from the act for the divine. And so when we do things without the need for external reward for their goodness, we are divine. When we make things for the made and the delight in the more world that comes about through our act, in our act. That's divine. Let's define it that way. So to circle back a little bit, so when we asked, how would you compensate Jesus for loving and serving men, that's part of Emerson's questions. Like, is that how you would reward them in heaven? Well, that they can do now, right? So the external compensation isn't needed. So either it's doubloons and champagne, or it's loving and serving. And if it's doubloons and champagne, then this whole thing stinks. And if it's loving and serving, then there's no need for the judgment anyway. So there you go. It's an absurd doctrine, and the preacher is blind, and ultimately he really does think, Emerson, if you follow his logic, the preacher thinks that it's actually good to do wicked things. Because otherwise, why would you need to be harmed later to make up for the good that you got by doing it? And that's the question. I don't think it has an answer. I think Emerson's spot on. So Emerson makes this important distinction between compensation in the thing, or in the deed, or in the soul, depending on where he says it, and in the circumstance, which isn't so closely tied together. So every act rewards itself in two ways. One, in the doing. So that's what we've just been talking about, sort of the divine way, in the actual act that's inseparable from the act. So when you do good, the compensation for the good is in the doing. And then there's the sort of the external manifestation of it, which usually follows upon it. It just sometimes takes a while. So the thief, Emerson would argue, hurts himself by doing the injustice of stealing. He may or may not get caught. He's probably going to get caught if he keeps doing it, right? But as we know, sometimes people don't get caught. So that's the circumstance, whether you get caught or not, and that's tied to the deed. But that the thief is being malicious in his theft and selfish, that is baked into the act itself. And so this is actually a good place to think about the objection that the kids always raise about what happens if you don't get caught, and so this is the way to begin to address that. So let's talk about these two quotations now, as he shifts gears and says, the ingenuity of man has been dedicated to the solution of one problem: how to detach the sensual sweet, the sensual strong, the sensual bright, etc., from the moral sweet, the moral deep, the moral fair. And of course, you need to understand the tone here, otherwise the passage will get misunderstood, because it's not like he's not in favor of this. This is a bad thing for people to try to do. And so to understand, again, this is the human. The human is trying to do this, use his imagination, misuse his imagination in order to try to separate things that ought not be separated. And of course, if it's time of great scarcity and the big issue is calories in versus calories out, well, of course you're going to try to separate these things, because the moral situation is going to get you killed. But now things are different, and we can be divine in ways that we used to not be able to be divine. And we should stop trying to cheat in this way. Let's stop trying to separate these. God would not try to separate these, right? A divine being would not try to separate these. Michelangelo wouldn't try to separate these. What if you could just, blink and the Sistine Chapel would be done? Well, what would there be in that, right? So it's the investment of your being in the care of the world that is actually something you want, right? It's like the highest activity of your being. It's not calories out. And again, life invests itself with inevitable conditions which the unwise seek to dodge, which one and another brags that he does not know. But the brag is on his lips, the conditions are in his soul. So again, you could translate this as stop trying to cheat. Stop trying to cheat. Only the unwise seek to dodge this. And of course, many of the boys spend 90% of their time trying to dodge this, right? They spend more time on Cliff Notes than they spend on the text. And that's how screwed up they are, right? They take pride in dodging their responsibilities often, and that needs to be addressed. And Emerson has that paragraph where he's got all these pithy quotations from the past, and two of these I think are really good. What will you have, quoth God? Pay for it and take it, is I think an extraordinarily powerful summation of his whole point, right? It's like, don't wait for something to come on sale. Don't wait till painting the Sistine Chapel ceiling goes on sale and you can do it for only half the energy, or parenting goes on sale and you can parent your child without actually doing any work. It's like the things worth doing never go on sale because the goods are only in the doing. So pay for it and take it. Don't complain that you don't have it. Don't wait for it to go on sale. Do what you can do in this way. Be divine as best you can now, and you're going to grow in your powers to be more divine as you go. Pay for it and take it. Stop waiting for things to go on sale. Stop trying to steal them, and stop sitting around. The other one that ends that whole series is the devil is an ass. And so, again, what a great expression. I'd never heard it before. Emerson wrote this. I don't know, maybe it was a popular expression before. But the devil's an ass. So, the devil gets away with a lot of stuff, right? The devil, who knows? He steals whatever. He gets somebody to lie. He's dishonest or whatever. But the devil has to be the devil, right? Would you want to trade places with the devil? And what would that mean if your answer is no? Here he gets away with all this stuff. He takes stuff that isn't his. He lies. He does whatever, right? But if you wouldn't trade places with him, then let's learn a lesson from that. The devil's an ass. The devil is an ass in all of this doing, and he has to be an ass. He has to be the ass that he is. And so upon consideration, the boys realize, like, wow, yeah. And then you try to ask them, and why do you keep trying to cheat the system then? Why do you keep trying to be this kind of little mini devil if you realize it's a useless proposition? And then finally, again, just totally turning our genetic inheritance on its head. He is great who confers the most benefits, right? Because that's the builder, that's the maker, that's the ethos builder, that's the person who helps, that's the person who has the most, right? The person with the most is the only person who can confer the most benefits. It's ultimately the only evidence that you really have the most is that you confer the most benefits. It's not the person who takes the most without paying for it at all. And, here he just keeps going with the same line of thought. The thief steals from himself, the swindler swindles himself. For the real price of labor is knowledge and virtue, whereof wealth and credit are signs, right? Blah, blah, blah. These ends of labor cannot be answered but by real exertions of the mind, or by the being. And in obedience to pure motives, the cheat, the defaulter, the gambler cannot extort the benefit, cannot extort the knowledge of material and moral nature, which his honest care and pains yield to the operative. So again, that's why the issue of internal goods versus external goods is so important here, right? You can steal the external things. You can't steal the internal things. You can't steal those. And so if that's where the value is to a being who is wise, right? That a wise being sees that that's where the real jackpot is, then you're going to stop trying to cheat, because then you're not going to be learning, and learning an application of creating is the highest form of life possible. And that's why the thief steals from himself. It's why the kid who plagiarizes is ultimately, basting himself in his own juices and cooking his own goose. All right, takeaways. You should be able to explain how animal, in the circumstance, and surviving fit together conceptually on the one hand, and explain how divinity, in the thing, and thriving fit together conceptually on the other hand. You should be able to explain Emerson's claim that the thief steals from himself, and explain Emerson's claim that what is most valuable cannot be stolen. Why can't what's most valuable in life be stolen?